Hey, what is up, you guys? It's your boy, Angry White Man Reviews here. Today we're going to be talking about how the Birds of Prey aren't sexy enough. It's feminist propaganda. It's bullshit. I hate it. I haven't even seen the movie, but I know it's just going to be SJW propaganda. I hate it. I hate when there are girls in my superhero movies.
So, I really liked Birds of Prey and the fantabulous emancipation of one Harley Quinn. I want to get that out of the way first before we go further into this video. It's an incredibly fun movie with great performances and some genuinely fantastic action scenes. I don't love the movie as much as some other people seem to, but we'll get to that later. I just wanted to make it incredibly clear that I did genuinely really love watching this movie. Director Cathy Yan was given the ability to create her true vision of what she wanted for the film, and to me that's so much more important than anything else, and I'm so happy that Warner Brothers gave her that chance instead of forcing it to be another bland studio-driven superhero movie. DC's been moving in that direction lately, and it's so satisfying to see. I loved all these boss-ass women, both in front of the camera and behind it. Every single person involved with this movie was fantastic, and the end product is just a hugely enjoyable time that I cannot recommend enough. However, as a massive Birds of Prey fan, I couldn't help but feel a little bit disappointed. For a movie titled Birds of Prey, it really was just a Harley Quinn movie with the birds kind of sprinkled in there. I mostly expected this going into it, but I was surprised to see how far that separation of Birds of Prey and Harley Quinn actually was, and that made me leave the theater a little upset. I love these characters, and I want to see them get a chance to properly shine, and I'm happy with the little that we got. I just wanted more of it. So I am going to be rewriting this movie, as you can probably tell from the title, but this is going to be a little bit new for me since this is the first time that I'm doing a rewrite of something that I genuinely loved, so it might be a little bit strange. Normally I try and focus on turning a movie that I didn't like into something that I like more, but instead this time I'll be focusing on trying to turn this movie from something that I liked into something that I would love as both a fan of film, a fan of Harley Quinn, and a fan of the Birds of Prey. Also, please try not to group me in with all the fucking sexist assholes talking shit about this movie without having seen it. I know it's really easy to do that, but really all the changes that I'm going to be making here are coming from the mindset that I wanted to see more of these people. I wanted to see more of Montoya, more of Huntress, more of Black Canary, and I wanted to give those characters the room to shine and grow into the dope-ass Birds of Prey that I love from the source material. Because all in all, this is a great movie, but only when you view it through the lens of a Harley Quinn movie, as you're intended to. As a Birds of Prey movie, like the title and marketing would suggest, it's mostly just okay. Maybe it's just me, but the trailers for this movie led me to believe that it'd be something that it wasn't. They showed so many scenes of these characters interacting and fighting together as a team, when in reality, the Birds of Prey team forms with only about a half hour left of the movie. So my job actually is going to be really easy. Just change the title. Change the title to Harley Quinn and the Birds of Prey, or just Harley Quinn, or the Fantabulous Emancipation, blah, 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 blah. My personal favorite would be Harley frickin' Quinn, because that's what she says in the movie. And there you go. It's fixed. Rewrite done. Thanks for watching, everybody. If you liked this video, be sure to like, comment, and subscribe. This has been TroyBoy017 coming at you live with another Fanboy Rewrite, and I'll see you around. Well, could you imagine if it was just that easy? I wish I was one of those YouTubers who could stretch out one idea into 10 minutes. That'd be so nice, just financially for me. So instead, since this is Fanboy Rewrites, and that stupid fanboy side of my brain was disappointed with the Birds of Prey aspects of the movie, that's what we're going to be tackling here today. So starting at the beginning, there's one thing about this movie that really bothered me, even through the lens of a Harley Quinn movie, and that's how the film presents Harley's relationship with Joker. Now, I'll admit I'm not the biggest Harley fan in the world. I really enjoy the character when she's written a certain way, but that happens so infrequently that I think it's fair of me to say that the character just doesn't do it for me. However, with that said, there are a few things about her that I think are crucial to a Harley Quinn story. The first of them being her relationship with Poison Ivy. The two of them have such great chemistry and a great history, and I think any solo Harley story needs to have Pamela in at least some fashion. Obviously, we can't do that here, so, you know, fine, whatever. But the second and probably more important aspect of Harley's character is her coping with her trauma after her relationship with Joker. The Joker is a fucking monster. No matter how sympathetic Joaquin Phoenix tries to make him, at the end of the day, he's a fucking piece of shit. He's probably the most evil character ever exist, which of course ties into his relationship with Harley. Of course, different versions have different interpretations of the relationship, but I think it's fair to say that the standard depiction is one of manipulation and abuse. A big part of Harley's character is realizing how horrible and abusive Joker truly is, and learning to overcome her traumas and become her own individual. It's always a really important storyline that I think needs to be translated to film. It has a huge amount of depth to her character, and also lets her examine herself psychologically and actually use that degree that she earned, because she earned it. Don't fucking tell me that she didn't. She fucking earned it. The new Harley Quinn animated series on DC Universe does a really great job of tackling these topics in an R-rated setting that's really mature, while also still being fun and a fun comedy. Apparently that was something that was cut from Ayer's original cut of Suicide Squad, which is upsetting, but I already fucking rewrote that, so we're past that. And so because that aspect of Harley is so important to me, it really disappointed me to see that it wasn't really something that they explored in this movie. Instead, the movie treats Joker like any other ex-boyfriend, and Harley Harley's going through any other breakup. And for a movie that's supposed to be about emancipation, it didn't really dive into the aspect of the character where she needs to find her own independence the most. Now, don't get me wrong, I like the arc that they did with Harley. It's just tough because when you have things like that animated series and the Batman animated series and the Harleen comic by the Harleen comic, which are all really fantastic Harley stories coming out at the same time as this, it really makes the film kind of pale in comparison, which is a bit of a shame. And as much as I'd like to view the film in isolation, I'm just having trouble doing that when there's all this other great Harley media that does a better job. So to sum up that incredibly long thing, I think a few lines at the beginning and sprinkled throughout about how Harley is the victim of emotional abuse would go a long way in adding to that really important aspect back into that character. Maybe whenever someone brings up Joker, she can just say that he's a piece of shit or something, or even easier, in the scene where she crashed into Ace Chemicals, there can be visual metaphors to her trauma spliced into it with all the horrible things that he did to her and her making those realizations in the moment. But then he'd have to get Jared Leto back, and I'm not really sure that's worth it. So keeping that one change in mind as we move on, everything else in that first 10 minutes is great. I really love the scene that introduces Montoya and Huntress especially. I'll talk more about Huntress later on, but for now, I'll just say that she was fantastic. So from there, I guess it's time we talked about Roman Sionis. Or is it Sionis? For the most part, I really like Black Mask in the movie, though I think a lot of that comes from Ewan McGregor just being generally really charismatic in everything he's in.
Hello there.
Because if we're being honest, the character wasn't written with much depth behind him, or at least a lot of it felt like it was cut. Sionis, when you look at him on paper, doesn't really have any qualities besides being crazy evil and a misogynist. But even then, his behavior isn't really enough to be considered commentary on that type of toxic masculinity in the real world, so it just never felt like there was much to him. I wholeheartedly believe that there was something that was left on the cutting room floor about his motivations. Like, why does he wear the mask? Why does he cut faces off? What does he want other than to rule Gotham? I figured there'd be some kind of psychological aspect to make him a little bit more interesting, and there's that scene before the final confrontation where he puts on the mask and it looks like he's almost scared of what it represents. And I thought that was something really interesting that should have been explored more. Here's what I propose. I think that Sionis should wear his mask more throughout the movie, specifically when he's involved with anything violent. Maybe to him, he sees the mask as like cleansing him of his sins or something, and he needs to be the Black Mask in order to stay clean while he does these horrible things. And that obsession with masks can tie into why he cuts people's faces off. He can be like the villain twice from My Hero Academia, where he's not wearing the mask, he feels incomplete and starts to panic. Not only would this give us more actual Black Mask character, like of him wearing the mask, but it would do so in a way that adds a lot of depth. Also, a quick side thing. If you're gonna make all these big headlines about how your character's gay and get all that press and hype, it really should be a little bit more clear in the actual movie. Sionis and Zsasz never felt like they were in a relationship. At the very most, I could maybe see implications of Zsasz secretly being attracted to Sionis, but it was never really clear enough to warrant all of that. As much as I don't like the term, queerbaiting is a real thing. The word tends to get thrown around a lot in the wrong cases, but it definitely happens, and it's a problem, since it sets up this expectation for people in the LGBT community to think that they're gonna be properly represented, and then when it doesn't come to fruition, that's really disappointing. So moving on, we're back to Harley, and we get that chase scene with Montoya. I really like the plot that Harley has a target on her back like John Wick. I think it's really cool and a really good touch. We get the scene with Montoya at the police station, and we learn about the Bertinelli diamond. Now, I'm cool with the diamond. It's a little standard for a MacGuffin, but it's kind of cool and has ties with Huntress, which I like. I just wish that the connection could have been utilized a little bit more. So Harley raids the police station, which is a really, really fantastic scene. The action in this movie in general is outstanding, and this is one of my favorite set pieces. They do a good job in this movie making the action fun to watch, brutal, but also without excessive murder. This is probably a topic for another time, but I really wish more superhero movies would shy away from having their heroes be mass murderers with a huge body count at the end. It works for some characters like Huntress or Punisher, obviously, but when every character is doing it, they kind of become less like superheroes and more like the military. So Harley says that she's looking for Cassandra Cain, and we rewind back a few days. Now, like I said, I'm not the biggest fan of the story structure since this flashback goes on for a long time, and it kind of disrupts the pace of the story, but I can't really figure out how to restructure it, and it's not egregious, so we're going to be keeping it. So rewind, and finally, I get to talk about her. I get to talk about my girl. I get to talk about motherfucking Black Canary, baby. Now, if you know me at all, you know that I'm an absurdly huge fan of the Black Canary character. This boss-ass bitch, who's one of the best fighters in the DC universe and doesn't take shit from anyone, but also has such a kind heart, is such a great hero and a great character, and I absolutely love her. If you watch my Era video, you'll know how important the character is to me. So I was really, really looking forward to how she was going to be depicted in this movie. Dinah has been disrespected a lot in live action as of late, not pointing any fingers, but you know who you are. But the way that Jurnee Smollett was talking about her in interviews, and just the sheer excitement that she had about the character just got me so hyped to see Dinah Lance finally done right. And overall, I am incredibly satisfied. Jurnee does a phenomenal job as Dinah and manages to convey that sense of badass confidence, but also heart and kindness, and also the Black Canary name has a legacy with her mother, which is something that gets overlooked a lot lately. Her fight scenes are dope as hell, her voice is absolutely beautiful when she's singing at that club, oh my god, she's fantastic, and overall she is my favorite version of Black Canary we've ever had in live action. However, there are still a few decisions with the character from a writing standpoint that I find a few issues with. I think my biggest grievance is the film's presentation that Black Canary is morally gray or an anti-hero. Dinah Lance is one of the most strong-minded people in the DC universe, and her morals are a test to that. She's basically Wonder Woman if Wonder Woman were a kick-ass rock star. I'm okay with her arc in the movie and owning up to her abilities and beginning to actively use them to help people. That's perfectly fine. I just think that they went a little bit too far with it. I understand that this is an adaptation and liberties have to be made, but it was just a little disappointing to have the first Black Canary on film not be the best that she can possibly be. The scene that specifically bothered me was after the talk between Dinah and Harley at the bar, which is a fantastic conversation that really drives the emotional core of the movie. I love that scene. Dinah stepped out of the club to see Harley completely blacked out with that guy practically on top of her. The guy tells Dinah that everything's fine, and she walks away before she steps in when she realizes that Harley is about to be taken. It's an incredibly small detail, but it's something that bothered me while watching the movie. The real Dinah Lance would never ever walk away from something like that. Never in a million years. It shouldn't take Harley almost being kidnapped for her to step in, or at the very least, the film should present Dinah as wanting to help but knowing that she can't. I think that small change would add a lot of depth to the character, and fans of Black Canary like myself would be really satisfied. So Dinah heads back to her apartment, and this is where we're officially introduced to Cassandra Cain. Now before I get into what I have to say about Cassandra Cain, I just want to say that I really enjoyed the actress that played her. The role that she played in the story and the character in general, when viewed through the lens of the movie, were really great. But that's really the thing, because as much as I enjoyed the character in the performance, this was not Cassandra Cain. And I knew that going into the movie, believe me, but still, as a massive fan of the Cassandra Cain character, I couldn't help but mention this. Now, I absolutely love Cassandra Cain from the comics. For those unfamiliar with her character, she was Batgirl for a good amount of time and was introduced as unable to speak due to a lifetime of trauma. Over time, she developed to be capable of talking, but she was still always more of a strong, silent type. This, as you can probably tell, is a pretty big departure from what we got in the movie. I've always loved the character in the comics and have felt like she's been underutilized in the Bat family as of late. She was fantastic in James Tynion's Detective Comics and Rebirth, and there's a scene in that story that honestly describes why I love the character so much. Spoilers for these issues, by the way. So, for context, in the story, the character of Clayface was in the process of being reformed. He was working with the Bat family and proving to be a really competent addition to the team. But shit happens as it does, and long story short, Batwoman decides to kill him in order to save some lives. This, as you would expect, did not go well with anyone. Cassandra, who had spent time with and grown close to Clayface, took this the hardest. In a fit of rage, she tears off the symbol of Batwoman's costume, saying that it means something. To not kill. To never kill. Ever since I read that scene, I've known that she was one of my favorite members of the Bat family. Sorry, that's really off topic and kind of a long tangent, but I wanted to get that out there because I love the character and I love that scene, and it's all the more reason why I'd like to see that character done justice on screen. Because this version of Cassandra Cain is Cass in name only, and that's it. This version of Cass is a loudmouth problem child who copes with her problems by stealing, which is a well-written character and works for the movie, don't get me wrong. That's just not Cass. I'm perfectly good with adaptations of these characters, but there comes a point where it would be better for everyone if it was just an original character. So, I have a few solutions to this. The first would be if we really need to keep the character Cassandra Cain, maybe DC made that a requirement that we have this list of characters, which honestly would make the most sense. So if she really needs to be Cassandra, then we're gonna have to make some bigger changes to her characterization. I'm okay with adjusting her backstory to being from a broken, abusive home as opposed to being trained to be a weapon. And she can still be a pickpocket, no problem there. It fits the story more and it doesn't overcomplicate things, so we can stick with that. I just think we need to see it affect her personally, making her more somber and silent, only speaking up when she really has something to say. Maybe she has a form of social anxiety when it comes to strangers because of her past trauma. And so that's the first option, and it's pretty complicated. But the second option, and probably the easier option, would be assuming that the character doesn't need to be Cassandra Cain. If there's not a mandate on that, then don't name the character that. She can be an original character, no problem. Or even better, if we want to stay within lesser known Bat family members, she can be Harper Row, aka Bluebird. Don't change a single other thing about her. Harper Row is kind of a newer Bat family character who started to gain a little bit more popularity from things like Young Justice, and she's a character who definitely doesn't get utilized enough, and she's literally the exact same character as Cassandra Cain from the movie. She's a bit of a delinquent who causes problems to deal with issues in her home life. Just Control F that script and replace the name and boom, there you go, you nailed it. She's even a bird in Birds of Prey, like come on, are you fucking serious? Also, not to mention that she's gay, and that would be nice to have some genuinely good representation. So for this rewrite, we'll be changing Cass into Harper because it's easier. If we want to stick stick with the assumption that the character had to be Cassandra, then we'd have to adjust the character accordingly, and that's a whole thing, and I don't really... This video's long enough, I don't want to do that. So Dinah heads into her apartment, and Montoya shows up. We learn that Dinah has actually been Montoya's mole in Sionis' operation this entire time. Now that Dinah was promoted to the driver, Montoya wants her to move in further and have her directly help in taking him down. But Dinah doesn't want to step in any further than she has to. We learn about her mother and how she blames the superhero lifestyle for her death, a touch that really works for her arc that I personally loved. I just think this extra addition not only strengthens the relationship between her and Montoya, but it again characterizes Dinah as someone who really does want to do the right thing. She just has to overcome this one character flaw before she can become the true Black Canary. Dinah then has that scene with Sionis in his office, and he tours her around, and this can be where we're introduced to that psychological aspect I was talking about earlier. And then we get the scene where Cassandra, now Harper Row, steals the diamond. Again, if you wanted to keep Cassandra Cain, then the presentation of her pickpocketing and her whole backstory would have to be changed pretty drastically, so we're sticking with Harper just for simplicity's sake. So now that the diamond's been stolen and swallowed, the main driving force of the movie has started, and we can now move on to Act 2. Holy shit, this movie has a long first act. So Sionis finds out about the diamond, and he's fucking pissed. What might be a good addition to his reaction is that I think he should put the blame completely on Dinah, even though she didn't do a single thing wrong, and it really is all Zaz's fault. It would be a more realistic approach to toxic masculinity and sexism in the workplace, and I think it would make a good commentary that's a little bit more subtle. I think it might also be helpful to basically blend this scene with the scene from the club that happens later. That table scene is genuinely horrific, and really makes Black Mask so terrifying and threatening. I just think that Dinah should have been able to see that side of him earlier to help with the pacing of her character's arc, since as it is now, Dinah's kind of treading water while she waits for her role in the story, and I think it would be better to bring her into the fold earlier. So Sionis starts to interrogate Harley and gets her to go after the diamond for him. I like this scene a lot. The only change I would make is I wanted to see more of that musical number, god damn it. I was really excited for it and the trailers hyped it up, but it feels like it was cut short. Anyway, Sionis puts the bounty out on Harley and Harper. She heads to the police station to find her, and we're back to where we were, holy shit, 20 minutes ago? Oh god, that was a long flashback. The only change I would make here is that I think when Dinah is calling Montoya, she should make a point that she's on her way to the station to get Harper. I find it a little weird how Dinah and Cass seem to know each other for a while, only for that to never really come up and be relevant to the characters. I think emphasizing that relationship, especially with Dinah, making her feel protective of her, will go a long way in better characterizing both Canary and Cassandra Cain. So Harley meets Harper and fights all those guys in that dope-ass action scene. Montoya comes in pointing a gun at Harley, and Harley knocks her out. But then, Dinah shows up to the station and sees Harley standing over an unconscious Montoya and a scared-looking Harper Row. She makes the judgment that Harley's gonna hurt Harper for the diamond, and Harley makes the judgment that Dinah's here to take Harper for Sionis, and we get a little fight between the two of them. This is 100% purely just for me, because I just want to see more Black Canary fighting, but it's also a misunderstanding that comes from the characters and their desires, and I think it would be a nice conflict to include. But yeah, it's mostly just for me, just let me have this, okay? More people barge into the station, coming after Harley. She drags Harper into the car and drives off, but not before Dinah leaps on top of the car and is taken away with them. We get a little action scene of Dinah clings to the car before they come to an understanding and Harley lets her in. Dinah says that Sionis must know that she was the mole by now since she went to the station, and now she's on the run, so she and Harley agree to team up to protect Harper until they can recover the diamond. I also just realized this whole MacGuffin is just one long poop joke, isn't it? You know what? I respect that. So the reason that I had Dinah join up with Harley this early is a pretty simple one. I really like Black Canary, and I wish she was in the movie more. Aside from that, I think that Canary having more of a presence in the movie and making her a genuine co-star would really help in making this feel more like a Birds of Prey movie as opposed to a Harley movie featuring the Birds of Prey. Even with that, it's still just one member of the team, but it's my favorite member, so fuck off. To make up for Dinah not being with Sionis anymore, we get a scene with him where he learns that she betrayed him, and he gets pissed. If we don't include that table scene at the club earlier, then this would be a good place to feature it instead. Maybe he also puts a bounty on Dinah's head and races the ones already out for Harley and Harper. So Harley, Dinah, and Harper share a few scenes together as they go to Harley's apartment above the Thai restaurant. That's when we're officially introduced to who I think most people will agree was the best character in the movie, Huntress. Huntress was, without a doubt, a huge standout for the movie. I've loved Mary Elizabeth Winstead ever since Sky High, and she did such an incredible job in this movie. They do such a good job of balancing the serious aspects of Helena Bertinelli and her quest for vengeance, with also the more comedic side of how someone would behave if they spent their entire life training to fight with no social interaction, almost like Cassandra Cain. Whoa, would you look at that? There's one specific scene with the character that's so fantastic, but I'll get into that later. However, just like with Canary, I feel like Huntress just didn't get enough screen time or presence in the story. But with that said, I don't think I'm gonna change how Huntress enters the story like I did with Dinah. The scene where they all meet her for the first time is just so great, and I feel like trying to put her in earlier ruins the flow for the rest of the movie. It's definitely possible to do, but I think at the expense of the greater picture. Maybe a few extra scenes of her sprinkled throughout a little bit more. Like, why did she show up to the restaurant under Harley's apartment? I'm assuming it was to find Zaz, but maybe something more could have come from that story point. A bomb is launched to Harley's apartment, and everything is destroyed. Harley and everyone making out, and we learn that Doc sold her out. Dinah decides that Harper and this diamond aren't worth being killed for, and she goes off on her own. That's when Harley, heartbroken, decides to turn in Harper. That's a lot of H's. She takes her to Amusement Mile and prepares to hand her over to Sionis. Now, in terms of changes within Act 3, I honestly don't have many, and the ones that I do are pretty minimal. So Sionis sends out an alert to meet at Amusement Mile and puts on the black mask. Now that we have a better understanding of what the mask represents to him, that scene is much scarier and the threat that he poses is so much more comprehensible. Since Dinah isn't with Sionis anymore in this version of the script, she also gets the message and sends it to Montoya. I know it doesn't really make sense why she would get that alert, but fuck it, I can't think of another option. So Harley has Harper tied up, and Montoya barges in and fights Harley. During the fight, Dinah sneaks in and saves Harper. Harley kicks Montoya out the window, and Zsasz arrives shooting her with a tranquilizer. He catches Dinah and points a gun at her, before a crossbow bolt is shot into his neck and we see Huntress standing in the doorway. The rest of the scene stays exactly the same. This scene is fantastic, probably the best in the entire movie. I think the reason that I was so let down initially by this movie was that I wanted more scenes like this, of the characters interacting and being a team. So when they only meet in the final 30 minutes of the movie, I was disappointed. Their interactions, characterizations, and motives in this scene are all so well developed and so well done that I just needed more of that same energy. So Black Mask shows up, and they all agree that they need to work together to beat him, and we get that fantastic action scene. This scene is just pure, unadulterated fun. The Birds of Prey finally together and kicking ass in a colorful, unique display of imagination. I loved every second of it. I specifically loved when Huntress took Cass aside and was concerned for her well-being, giving her the toy car that she was given as a child. Trauma is something that's never really touched upon in superhero movies, so to see that kind of scene in a movie like this really caught me off guard and broke me. Just like that scene with the tiger from Shazam, these kinds of moments where we see our heroes caring for others is really important in defining the difference between a superhero and an action star. I have a whole video on the subject, so if you want to check that out, feel free. So they all get pinned down by Black Mask's men shooting at them, and Harper gets taken. Dinah tells them all to cover her ears. She takes a deep breath, steps out, and unleashes the Canary Cry. Now, I'm going to take this time to talk a little bit about the Canary Cry. I think this movie did a really good job with it. It's not just a sound blast, but a concussive wave too, which is something that Arrow kept on forgetting. I think that they could have done a better job of setting it up, however, like maybe include a scene where she's getting angry and screams and something breaks in addition to her breaking the glass in the club, since I know there were some people who thought the power came out of nowhere. I'm also not personally a fan of the sound effect that they used. It seems like so many people have trouble determining what it should sound like, which is understandable, but I personally prefer the way that Injustice 2 did it actually, with it sounding like a blend between a scream and a bird cry. But besides that, I think they did a good job. That being said, it really bothers me when people act like the cry is Canary's biggest asset and that's all she's good for. Or like she's just Banshee and fishnets or something. In reality, the Canary Cry is just a minor tool that Dinah has at her disposal, not her main thing. She's one of the best fighters in the DC universe. The Canary Cry doesn't change that. So I would have liked to have depicted that in film. Now, I am most definitely biased, but Dinah fainting after unleashing the cry came across as trying to nerf the character and take her out of commission because she's too strong and you want to have the final showdown between Harley and Black Mask. But if you wanted to keep the character busy, I think it would have been so much cooler if after unleashing the big giant cry, she leaps out into battle to take on all of Black Mask's guys on her own, implementing smaller versions of the Canary Cry along with her martial arts. To me, and I think a lot of other Black Canary fans, it would have been so satisfying to see Dinah Lance really go all out as the Black Canary. So Harley goes after Black Mask and Harper, and we get that chase scene. Again, a really, really great action scene, super fun, super unique, I loved it. I would have liked to seen a little bit more Huntress involved though, since she's in the movie so little, I'll take every second I can get with her. Sionis crashes his car and takes Harper to the pier. Now, as you'd expect, I would prefer it if the birds were present during the showdown, but I also really like how small scope it is, just Harley versus one guy on a spooky pier where she has to confront her mistakes. I also think Sionis' death by grenade, while I'm not a fan of killing off good villains like him since I want to see them in more things, it was well done, if not just for how brutal it was. And with that, the movie's over. We wrap things up, Harper shits out the diamond, and the Birds of Prey form, and Harper drives off with Harley. Now, when it was Cassandra Cain, I wasn't a fan of her ending up as Harley's protege, since that would just lead to a hugely different direction for the character. So if we were to keep Cass, I would want her to live with either Canary or Huntress, since I think that's a little bit more in line with what the Cassandra Cain character would do, especially if she were to become Batgirl someday. But since for this rewrite, she's Harper Row, I think her ending up with Harley would be fine, since Harper's a pretty new character, so there's a little more wiggle room when you adapt her. And that's Birds of Prey. It's really weird. I liked this movie a lot. I really did. I feel like I need to make that clear, but I just have so much to say about it and so many little things that I couldn't let go, because I really wanted this movie to be the best that it could be. And while I was entertained, I feel like when you view it compared to every other story that tries to tackle similar things, it just doesn't hold up. It's not the best Harley story out right now, it's not the best Birds of Prey story, it's not the best female-led superhero movie, it's not the best R-rated comic book movie. I recognize that I'm incredibly biased, and that this wasn't supposed to be a Birds of Prey movie. It's supposed to be their origin. I still just can't move past the title and the advertising and the inclusion of these characters that I love. I know comic accuracy is a stupid thing to care about, but I love these characters for very specific reasons, and when those reasons aren't there in the movies, then I'm going to be a little disappointed. And I'm gonna be honest, I am really tired of this new trend that I've noticed lately, where we're supposed to wait a couple movies before we get the character as they're portrayed in the source material. They did it with Superman and Spider-Man and now the Birds of Prey, and I've just gotten to the point where I'm tired of being hyped up to see my favorite characters on screen, only to be told that I'm supposed to wait until the end of a trilogy in 6 more years before I can actually get to see those characters. So with this rewrite, I wanted to try and lessen that blow when it came to these badass girls that I adore so much. I understand that this rewrite is definitely not perfect, since most of my changes were foundational in Act 1. I feel like I'm messing with the dominoes before they start falling, and I'm ruining the finished product. Some of these issues definitely need a little more ironing out, but I was just trying to address the things that I had personal issues with. I also recognize that my perspective on this film isn't exactly relevant. I'm a fucking lame white guy who made a long ass video complaining about comic accuracy of a great movie that stars some incredible women and was made by an absolute badass Cathy Yan. If you love this movie, hell fucking yes. You are entitled to that. If the movie spoke to you and reached you at an emotional place that I'm not capable of understanding from my perspective, I absolutely fucking love that. I want these characters to inspire that kind of emotional reaction. I just personally didn't experience that, and I was hoping that I could have. So while it might be tempting, please, I'm begging you, please try not to group me in with the other fucking assholes on YouTube. You know who I'm talking about. The middle-aged bearded guy with glasses and a hat that sits in front of a backdrop of his comic collection or otherwise nerdy merchandise that screams about diversity in women and how the SJWs are ruining everything whenever a marginalized group gets some representation. I'm honestly embarrassed to be sharing a platform with dickwads like that. Birds of Prey is great. Birds of Prey is important. Birds of Prey is everything that the comic book film industry should be striving for. I just think that it should accomplish a little bit more. Also, stop hitting this movie against Sonic, what the fuck? This video is brought to you by Honeygain. Making money has never been easier. Meet Honeygain, the revolution of passive income. Just by sharing your internet connection, you can earn money to cover your monthly subscriptions such as various comic books, online games, Netflix, YouTube Premium, or others. What's the best part about it? Your device does all the work for you. Setting up is easy. Visit honeygain.com or follow the link in the description below and download the app for your Windows, macOS, or Android device. Leave your device connected, and you'll be paid for the amount of data you share and the time you're connected. So how does it work? In short, you essentially employ your internet connection to make money for you. But actually, the Honeygain network is used by researchers from e-commerce, advertising, and web intelligence companies. These companies extract insights from the web to enable market research, ad fraud prevention, brand protection, pricing intelligence, travel fair aggregation, and SEO monitoring services. And it is 100% safe. Honeygain's app connection is inaccessible by outsiders and is fully encrypted, guaranteeing private information is unreachable. Rest assured and make money from home without any security threats. Don't miss this opportunity and join millions of users making their lives better thanks to the sharing economy. And don't forget to use the code TROYOBOYO17 to get an initial bonus of $5 to your new Honeygain account. And with that said, thanks so much for watching. That's the end of the video. I know this video kind of came out at a kind of a weird time. I just wanted to get it out there to maybe help with a bit of a distraction, a bit of an escapism from what's going on right now. I know it's a lot and I know it's really scary, but it's all going to be okay. We're going to make it through this. But if you like this video, be sure to like, comment, and subscribe if you haven't already. It really means a lot to me. This has been TroyBoyo17 coming at you live with another fanboy rewrite. Remember to wash your hands, and I'll see you around.